In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. With His voice, light broke through the darkness and the world began to take shape, one moment, one miracle at a time. God planted a magnificent garden called Eden. It was full of life, trees bursting with fruit, rivers flowing with beauty, and creatures of every kind. At the center stood two special trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. From the dust of the ground, God formed the first man. He breathed life into him, and Adam opened his eyes to the wonder of creation. God brought all the animals to Adam, and He gave each one a name: elephants, eagles, camels, and cats. Adam had purpose, but something was missing. God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." So while Adam slept, God took one of his ribs and created Eve, a companion, a partner, a gift. Adam and Eve lived together in the garden in perfect peace. They walked with God, cared for His creation, and had everything they needed. God gave one clear command: "You may eat from any tree, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you eat from it, you will surely die." One day a serpent appeared. Crafty and cunning, it whispered to Eve, "Did God really say not to eat from this tree?" Doubt crept in, and Eve listened. Eve reached out, took the fruit, and ate. She gave some to Adam, and he ate too. In that moment, their eyes were opened, and everything changed. Ashamed and afraid, Adam and Eve hid among the trees. But God called out, "Where are you?" He already knew what they had done. Sin had entered the world. God clothed them, but paradise was lost. They were sent out of the garden, and an angel stood guard to protect the way to the tree of life. Even in judgment, God offered hope. One day a Savior would come, a descendant who would crush the serpent and restore what was broken. When the world turned dark, one man's faith lit the way. Watch the incredible Lego-style journey of Noah, filled with animals, adventure, and a promise from above. Will he survive the storm? Will the world get a second chance? The earth was filled with violence and corruption. People had turned away from God, and darkness covered the land. But one man stood out, Noah. He walked with God. One day God spoke to Noah and shared a plan to save what was good. God instructed Noah to build a giant ark, a safe place for his family and every kind of animal during a great flood that would cover the earth. Day after day, Noah and his sons worked. People laughed at them, not believing a flood would come, but Noah trusted God. Then something amazing happened. Animals began arriving, two by two, just as God said: lions, elephants, birds, and more. When the ark was ready, Noah, his family, and the animals entered. God Himself closed the door, and the sky began to change. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier and louder. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights, covering everything. The entire world was underwater. Mountains disappeared beneath the waves, but the ark floated safely, just as God promised. Time passed. Noah sent out a raven, then a dove, searching for dry land, but they returned with nothing, until one day, the dove came back with an olive leaf. Hope! The flood was over, and dry land had appeared once again. God told Noah to leave the ark. Stepping onto dry land, Noah and his family gave thanks. The world was clean. A new beginning had come. God placed a rainbow in the sky, a promise that He would never again destroy the earth with a flood, a symbol of love, hope, and a brand new start. With an army chasing after Moses and his people, how will they escape? Watch this amazing video to find out what happens next. In a time of great fear, a Hebrew mother placed her baby in a basket, setting him afloat on the Nile to save his life. Pharaoh's daughter discovered the baby and, moved with compassion, raised him as her own in the palace. As Moses grew, he saw the suffering of his people, and his heart burned with justice. After defending a Hebrew man, Moses fled Egypt and began a new life in the desert. One day Moses encountered a bush engulfed in flames, but it was not consumed. There, God called him by name. "Moses, Moses!" Obeying God's command, Moses returned to Egypt and stood before Pharaoh with a message: "Let my people go." When Pharaoh refused, God sent powerful signs and plagues to show his might and free his people. On the night of deliverance, God protected his people as death passed over the homes marked with lamb's blood. Cornered by Pharaoh's army, God parted the Red Sea, making a path through the waters for his people to escape. When the Egyptians pursued them, the sea returned, crushing their chariots. God's people were saved. At Mount Sinai, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments, laws to guide his people in righteousness. And so Moses led the Israelites through the wilderness, trusting in God's promise of a better land. In a quiet field, an angel appeared to Samson's mother with a divine message. "You will have a son. He must never cut his hair, for he will be set apart to God from birth." And so it came to pass. Samson was born, a special child chosen by God. His strength was rooted in a vow, never to cut his hair. On the road to find a bride, a lion roared and attacked. But the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon Samson, and with his bare hands he tore the beast apart. At his wedding feast, Samson challenged the Philistines with a riddle from the lion he had slain, but they deceived his wife to learn the answer. Fueled by rage, Samson caught 300 foxes, tied torches to their tails, and released them into the Philistines' fields, burning their crops to the ground. When 1,000 Philistines came to capture him, Samson took up the jawbone of a donkey, and with God's power, he struck them all down. Samson fell in love with Delilah, but the Philistines bribed her to discover the secret of his strength. As Samson slept, Delilah betrayed him. She cut his hair, and his strength left him. The Philistines captured him. Blinded and bound in chains, Samson was thrown into prison. The once mighty warrior was now a mockery in the hands of his enemies. But in prison, Samson prayed, "Lord, remember me, strengthen me just once more." Brought before thousands at the Philistine temple, Samson leaned against the pillars, and with one final cry to God, he pushed with all his might. The temple crumbled, and in his death, Samson defeated more enemies than he had in life. A giant ruled the battlefield, until a shepherd with a sling rewrote the story. Keep watching to find out how it all went down. In the valley of Elah, 2 armies squared off, Israel on one side, the Philistines on the other, but only one warrior roared loud enough to shake bricks. Out stepped Goliath, a massive warrior with armor pieces clanking and a voice that echoed through the valley. Meanwhile, little David was happily herding his sheep, stacking fences and strumming a harp. David's dad handed him a lunchbox and sent him to the front lines to deliver snacks to his brothers, a delivery that would change history. As David arrived, he heard the mighty Goliath taunt God's people. But while others trembled in their studs, David's faith locked in. "Let me fight him," David declared. The camp laughed, but the bricks of courage were stacking up fast in this little shepherd. Saul offered David his royal armor, but it was too big and blocky. David ditched it for his trusty sling and a handful of stones. At a nearby stream, David picked up 5 perfectly round stones, all he needed to face the towering block ahead. David approached the battlefield. Goliath laughed. "You send me that?" But David had a different kind of power behind him. David twirled his sling and let the stone fly. One perfect shot, one stone to the forehead, bullseye. With a great plastic thud, Goliath toppled, face down in the dirt. The sound of silence was soon replaced with cheers. The Israelites cheered and charged. The day was won, not by size or sword, but by faith and one brave little shepherd.